I still remember the way she looked at me that morning, half distracted, half sweet, like she was already halfway gone but didn't want me to notice. Claire always had this way of smiling with just her lips. Never too much, just enough to keep me believing everything was fine. And for 11 years, I did. She was headed to Chicago for what she said was a 3-day management retreat. Something about team alignment and vision mapping. The kind of buzzword salad companies toss around to justify hotel bills. I helped her load her suitcase into the trunk. She kissed me twice, once on the cheek and once on autopilot. Then she drove off like it was any other Tuesday. Only it wasn't. Because something about the way she avoided eye contact that morning didn't sit right with me. And the truth is, it hadn't for a while. We've been married long enough that I can tell when she's lying. She doesn't fidget. She doesn't look guilty. But she does go quiet. Real quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for forgiveness. It just waits for you to stop asking questions. Claire and I met at a recruiting fair. I was 2 years into a career in IT project management. She was in HR, organizing the booths with that clipboard swagger that made everyone think she was in charge, and usually, she was. We started dating. Then we moved in together. Got married in the fall. Bought a house in the suburbs. 2 kids. A dog. Joint Costco membership. The works. We both worked for the same company, a mid-sized tech firm with big dreams and painfully average execution. She stayed in HR. I climbed into middle management. We kept things steady, or so I thought. But then there was Matt. At first, he was just another guy on my floor. A solutions engineer with a sharp wardrobe and too much gel in his hair. We'd exchange the usual water cooler nonsense. March Madness picks. Fantasy football. Who brought the good coffee to the break room? I never liked the guy, if I'm being honest. There was something about him that screamed curated, like every opinion he had was tailored to whoever was listening. But Claire liked him. Or rather, she respected his energy, as she put it. Said he was one of the few guys who actually listens when women talk. That should have been a red flag. Instead, I just nodded like a fool. Funny thing is, I didn't even suspect Claire at first. My radar was up, but it was pointed in the wrong direction. I thought maybe Matt was hitting on one of the other women in HR. Or that he was just trying to charm his way up the ladder. Typical office politics. It wasn't until I saw her phone light up one night while she was in the shower that things started to crack open. It was a text from M. Just one line. Still thinking about that joke you made. Your dangerous smirking face. I stared at it for a while. The way you stare at a spider in the corner of the room, wondering if it's really a threat or just misplaced. I didn't say anything that night. Or the next one. Or the one after that. Instead, I did what most men in my situation do. I started watching. Quietly. Carefully. And the more I watched, the more I saw it. The way she laughed harder at his jokes in meetings. The way they lingered near each other at happy hour. The way her phone never left her side anymore, like it was some kind of life support system. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. Because confronting someone means you're ready to hear the answer. And I wasn't. Not then. So I waited. I watched. And when the Chicago trip came around, I knew. I knew she wasn't going there to align on strategy. She was going there to be with him. Matt was on that trip too. Different department, same destination. They didn't even bother to lie about it. But the part that really broke me? They took separate flights. Booked separate rooms. They dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, just in case anyone was watching. It was smart. Clean. Cold. Which told me something I wasn't prepared to admit. This wasn't a fling. This was planned. I didn't follow her to Chicago. Didn't hire a PI. Didn't track her phone or hack her email. I didn't need to. Because when someone you've loved for over a decade stops looking at you like they used to, you don't need proof. You already know. And the thing about betrayal is, it doesn't always come with fireworks or screaming or some dramatic hotel confrontation. Sometimes it's just a quiet Wednesday night, sitting on your couch, staring at your own reflection in the black screen of a turned-off TV, wondering when the person sitting beside you stopped being your wife and started being someone else's. And that's where this story begins. Not with a fight, not with a discovery, but with a man who knew, deep down, that the life he built was already starting to unravel. And the worst part? He still wasn't ready to let go. After I read that message from M, I didn't confront Claire. I didn't accuse her. I didn't change how I acted. I simply adjusted my expectations. I became observant. When she said she had late meetings, I took mental notes of the time. When she said she was exhausted from work, I memorized her tone. When she came home wearing a different perfume one I hadn't bought, I noticed how quickly she threw those clothes into the wash. She was still trying to pretend like everything was fine. I guess I was too. I started keeping a small notebook, something I could carry without suspicion. It looked like a regular pocket planner. Nothing dramatic. Just a few lines a day. Tuesday, left work at 5:20. Said she got home at 6:45. Commutes usually 35 minutes. Thursday, wore new blouse. Said it was a gift from the girls in HR. Never seen it before. Friday, laughed at a meme on her phone and turned the screen away when I leaned over. It sounds petty. It felt petty. But when someone starts rewriting your story without telling you, you start collecting chapters of your own. Matt became more visible too. I started noticing how he lingered outside HR after meetings, always stopping by to follow up with Claire about something or other. Always when the office was thinning out. Always when no one was paying attention except me. One day, I followed them. Not in a trench coat and sunglasses kind of way. Just enough to keep eyes on them after work. They left the building 10 minutes apart. Smart. Careful. She headed to the parking garage. He went around the corner and waited. I parked at the gas station across the street, watching from my truck. 15 minutes later, her car pulled out. He followed. They didn't go to a hotel. That would have been too obvious. They went to a restaurant. A quiet little Italian place tucked away in a part of town no one visits unless they're trying not to be seen. I didn't go inside. Didn't need to. I waited. Watched. 2 hours later, they came out, walking close, not touching, not laughing, just close. The kind of closeness that doesn't need affection to scream intimacy. He opened her car door like a gentleman. She smiled like a woman who hadn't smiled at me in months. She didn't come home smelling like garlic or wine. She came home tired. Said there was a training session that ran long. I kissed her on the forehead and said I hoped it went well. She smiled. Lied again. And I let her. That was the moment I decided this wouldn't be an emotional war. It would be strategic. Surgical. The next day, I bought a small GPS tracker. Nothing fancy. Fits in the palm of your hand. Syncs with an app on your phone. I placed it under her back bumper while she was inside making breakfast. She never noticed. Later that week, I installed a remote camera in the living room, the one she barely used unless she was on a video call. Just in case. I started syncing her calendar to my work laptop when she left it unlocked. I wasn't just her husband anymore. I was the quiet investigator in his own home. The guy no one suspects because he's smiling through the slow-motion car crash. And still, I didn't confront her. Why? Because I wasn't ready to give her an out. Not yet. I wanted the truth. The whole truth. Not just something happened, or it didn't mean anything. I wanted her to squirm under the weight of her own decisions. I wanted her to face what she was breaking, not run from it. The last weekend before her next work trip, she asked me if I could take the kids to my brother's house for the night. Said she needed some quiet time before the Monday madness. She smiled when she asked. I smiled back and said, of course. She kissed me on the cheek and said I was the best. I just nodded. I knew what she was planning. And this time, I wasn't going to watch from the sidelines. I was going to walk into it, eyes wide open. Because some truths are only revealed when you're willing to burn down the fantasy. And I was finally ready to light the match. It was a Thursday when I finally decided to show up. Claire had told me she was attending a regional leadership summit in Columbus. She'd be gone overnight. Left Thursday morning. Said she was carpooling with 2 other HR managers from neighboring branches. Told me not to worry, she'd be back by dinner tomorrow. That morning, she kissed me goodbye like nothing was wrong. Smiled, even. Said, thanks again for understanding. I smiled too. And then, after she drove off, I picked up my overnight bag and headed for Columbus. Not to the summit. To the Marriott she mentioned a little too casually, the one I confirmed through our company's travel system that Matt had also booked for the exact same night. I drove slow. Real slow. Wanted time to think. When I got there, I didn't barge in. Didn't pound on the door or yell in the lobby. I took my time. Had a coffee across the street. Waited for the sun to dip below the skyline, and then I walked in. The front desk clerk was young, maybe 20. I told him my wife was attending the corporate event on the 2nd floor and that I'd left my key in the room. Flashed my ID. He asked her name, then handed me a spare key card. Room 422, he said with a smile. I took the elevator up, heart pounding, hands steady. When I reached the door, I didn't knock. I slid the key card in, heard the lock click, and pushed the door open. There she was, sitting on the edge of the bed in her pajamas, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, startled, and then gave me the smile. That same, I'm in control smile she always used when she didn't expect to be caught. Babe, what are you doing here? She asked. I didn't answer right away. I set my bag down by the door and took a seat in the armchair. Didn't feel like staying home tonight, I said calmly. Figured I'd surprise you. Her smile faltered for a half second, then returned. Well, you did. You surprised me, she said, shifting uncomfortably. You alone? I asked. She nodded. Yeah. My coworkers went out for drinks. I stayed behind. I was going to order room service. I let her speak. Let her pile on the lies. It was strange, watching the person you love morph into a stranger right in front of you. So Matt's not here? I asked directly. That did it. Her face changed. Not panic. Not fear. Just that momentary flicker of calculation, like a chess player trying to figure out how many pieces she could still save. No, she said too quickly. Why would he be? I nodded slowly. Because his car's in the lot. And because his room is directly across the hall. For 21, I passed him on my way up. Silence. Dead, heavy silence. Claire swallowed, her throat visibly tight. She opened her mouth to say something. Maybe to lie, maybe to confess, but I held up my hand. Don't, I said. Just don't. She sat still. I stood up and walked to the window, staring out over the parking lot below. You know, I began. I used to think if this ever happened, if you ever cheated, I'd scream. Break things. Storm out. I turned to face her. But the truth is, it's worse than I imagined. Not because of what you did, but because of how easy it was for you to do it. Claire blinked, but didn't speak. I took a step closer. You didn't just lie. You rehearsed it. You planned it. You made space in your schedule, in your phone, in your heart, for someone else. She tried. I'm not finished. She closed her mouth. You brought him here. You were going to spend the night with him. Maybe not for the first time. Maybe not the last. But tonight, you chose him. Not me. Not the kids. Not the life we built. Him. I expected her to cry. She didn't. I expected her to deny. She didn't do that either. What she did was worse. She just sat there, frozen in the silence, like she couldn't figure out whether she should fight for this or just let it die. And that's when it hit me. She was already gone. Maybe not physically, maybe not legally, but emotionally, spiritually. She'd left a long time ago. I picked up my bag and walked to the door. Where are you going? She asked, finally finding her voice. I paused, hand on the knob. Back to my life, I said. You're welcome to come find me if you remember what that used to mean. And I left. Walked out of that room like a man leaving a job he once loved, one that stopped loving him back. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. Because something about the way she didn't try to stop me told me there was still more I didn't know. And I was going to find it. The weekend after I walked out of that hotel room, I stayed with my brother. Slept maybe 4 hours total. Not because I was spiraling, but because my brain refused to shut off. See, something Claire said had been looping in my head. Actually, it's what she didn't say. When I left that room, she didn't deny anything. Didn't beg. Didn't defend Matt. But more than that, she didn't panic. And that's what made me nervous. Because if she thought losing me meant consequences, she'd have reacted. Instead, she let me walk. Like it was part of the plan. That's when it hit me. Maybe it was. Claire had always been smart. Methodical. Too much of a planner to risk our marriage on lust alone. And Matt, he wasn't worth the fallout. Not unless there was something else tying them together. So I started digging. At work, I logged into the company project drive, the one Claire technically didn't have access to, but somehow always seemed to know about before I did. I checked our quarterly reports, then cross-referenced them with the project files Matt had managed over the past year. That's when I found it. A subfolder labeled archive_203_finance. Buried deep. Tucked under an old infrastructure proposal from 18 months ago. The files inside were encrypted. Not by IT, by Matt himself. But IT forgot one thing. They granted me admin access last fall when I stepped in as interim PM during budget realignment, which meant I could override encryption settings. So I opened it. The folder wasn't about infrastructure. It was about invoices. Dozens of them. Vendor payments. Consulting fees. Subcontractor charges. At first glance, nothing seemed wrong until I noticed that the same 3 vendors appeared over and over again. Small firms. No physical addresses. No logos. Just names. Liar Partners, Echelon Works, MAV Data Solutions. All billing for systems analysis or migration reviews. All approved by Matt. All signed off by Claire. Over $400,000 in disbursements. I dug deeper. None of those firms were in our official vendor list. None of them had registered contracts. In short, they didn't exist. Fake companies. Fake charges. Real money. They were laundering money through fake consulting and doing it under our noses. And the kicker? One of the payment accounts, the bank routing ID on a fake invoice, matched a deposit I had seen once on a credit card statement. Claire's name wasn't on it, but Matt's was. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about an affair. It was a con. The kind you run on someone when you think they're too distracted or too in love to ever notice. Claire and Matt weren't just sneaking around for hotel nights and wine bars. They were funneling money out of our company. And worse, they were using my name, my department, my projects to do it. I sat back in my chair, the hum of the office lights overhead feeling suddenly deafening. I thought I'd been betrayed as a husband, but I'd been played as a colleague, as a boss, as a man, and I wasn't the only one at risk. If this got out the wrong way, I'd be the one under review. Not them. All the approvals traced back to my department, my team. And if there's one thing companies hate more than theft, it's scandal. So I took screenshots, backed up every file I found, emailed them to a personal encrypted drive. Then I printed one invoice, just one, slid it into a manila folder, labeled it for Claire. I wasn't going to confront her with emotion this time. I was going to give her a choice and see what kind of woman she really was. I didn't want drama. I didn't want a parking lot scene or a shouting match in the kitchen while the kids were upstairs with their headphones on. So I did what I'd do with any coworker I suspected of crossing a line. I booked a meeting. Neutral ground. Glass walls. Daylight. The kind of space where lies feel heavier. I sent Claire a calendar invite from my work address. Quick sync. Q2 budgets plus project overlap. She accepted in under a minute. The room was on the 6th floor. Quiet. Mostly used for exit interviews and vendor calls. I sat at the far end of the table, folder in front of me, coffee untouched. She walked in 5 minutes late, looking calm, polished, hair tied back, blazer sharp, like nothing was unraveling. "Hey," she said, closing the door behind her. "You okay?" Your invite seemed formal. I didn't smile. "Have a seat." She hesitated for a beat, then pulled out a chair. Silence. Then I slid the folder across the table. "Open it." She looked down at it, then up at me. Her face didn't twitch. Not a blink. Not a flinch. Just a soft sigh, like she was disappointed that I'd gotten here too soon. She opened the folder, scanned the printout, and said nothing. For a moment, I wondered if she'd pretend not to recognize it. But then she did something I didn't expect. She closed the folder, folded her hands on top of it, and leaned in. "You weren't supposed to see that." No panic. No excuse. Just clarity. "You used me," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You used my department, my approval lines, my logins." "Yes," she replied. No hesitation. I stared at her. "Why?" She took a breath, then shrugged, like we were discussing reallocating holiday budgets. "Because no one checks the project managers. Especially not the ones with clean records and loyal reputations. You were perfect. You're my wife." She tilted her head, just a little. "I was also your wife when you stayed late 4 nights a week for 2 years straight. When you forgot our 10th anniversary because of a product launch. When you missed our son's first piano recital because of that emergency rollback." My jaw tightened. "So this is revenge?" "No," she said softly. "This is evolution." She leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "Matt came to me with the idea. I said no at first. Then I realized something. You spent years building systems, processes, layers of efficiency. You automated everything, made it so good no one needed to look twice. So I looked twice." She smiled. Not smug. Just satisfied. "You gave me the playbook. I just read it better than you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't desperation. It was strategy. "You do realize this is prison time, right?" I said quietly. She nodded. "Not if I walk before it tips. Not if there's no audit. Not if the evidence disappears." I opened my laptop, showed her the cloud backup, the entire folder. Timestamps. Locations. IP logs. "I already have it secured," I said. "I've already talked to a lawyer. You don't walk away from this." "Not clean." She stared at the screen, then looked back at me. "I thought you might," she said. That's why I prepared something too. She reached into her bag, pulled out a thin envelope, and slid it across the table. I opened it. Inside were printed screenshots. Messages. From me. Private Slack DMs from years ago. A few jokes, borderline, if taken out of context. One reference to a contractor I'd hired on the side, under the radar. Claire. That contractor? She said, cutting me off. She's not listed on payroll. You paid her from a side fund. Unauthorized vendors, Adam. My stomach sank. You kept these? She nodded. Just in case. And now seems like the case. You're threatening me. I'm protecting myself, she replied. Because this doesn't have to be mutually assured destruction. We can still end this quietly. I laughed, short, bitter. After everything? You want peace. No, she said. I want leverage. Peace is just what it looks like on paper. And that's when I realized something terrifying. Claire hadn't just betrayed me. She had studied me, memorized my blind spots, anticipated my instincts, played the long game, not just in our marriage, but in our careers. And Matt was just the pawn. She was the one moving the pieces. Everything I thought I knew, the affair, the deception, the hotel, that was just the surface. The real betrayal was that I'd spent a decade sleeping beside the smartest enemy I'd ever known. I left that meeting room with two things, her confession and the envelope she thought would save her. I didn't say a word after she dropped that line. Peace is what it looks like on paper. I just stood up, adjusted my jacket, and walked out. Didn't even take my coffee. She didn't follow me. That told me all I needed to know. Claire wasn't bluffing. She was betting on my silence, on the fact that I had too much to lose. But what she didn't realize is that when you take everything from a man, his trust, his pride, his sense of home, you don't leave him with nothing. You leave him with clarity. And with clarity comes strategy. I spent the next 3 days building my own playbook. First, I hired a forensic accountant, privately. Not through HR, not through legal, not through the company. I went outside the system. A friend of mine from college, Noah, ex-IRS, now doing private work for companies that can't afford public scandal. He owed me a favor from years back. Just give me logins and a list of names, he said. I'll handle the rest. I did better than that. I gave him the encrypted files, the folder tree, the invoice list, and a coffee-stained printout Claire had left in the shred pile 6 weeks ago. He whistled when he saw the numbers. This wasn't sloppily done, he said. Whoever ran this knows how to clean up behind themselves. But not well enough. Then I called a second person, Janet Simmons, head of compliance, retiring in 6 months. I knew she hated Matt, and she never liked Claire's tone in budget meetings. I also knew she had a reputation, the kind of woman who didn't mind stepping on toes if it meant getting credit for cleaning up a mess. I met her for lunch, brought a binder, didn't mention names, not directly, just walked her through a hypothetical. What would happen, I asked, if someone found proof of financial fraud involving fake vendors, internal sign-offs, and project budgets routed through a department like mine? She looked over her glasses and said, well, if that happened, and the person who found it brought it straight to me, and only to me, I'd make sure they didn't take the fall. Pause. And I'd make sure they got promoted once the dust settled. That was all I needed. Because now, I wasn't just playing defense. I had leverage, allies, documentation, motive, timeline. But I wasn't done yet. Because there was one more piece to this puzzle. Matt. I knew he was Claire's pawn. But I also knew something else. Pawns panic when you corner them. So I invited him to coffee. Made it seem casual. Said I was ready to bury the hatchet. He showed up 15 minutes late, wearing his usual smug grin and cologne that smelled like cheap victory. Glad you reached out, he said. I know things have been tense. But look, this thing with Claire, it wasn't supposed to. I held up my hand. I'm not here to talk about Claire. He blinked, caught off guard. I'm here to talk about wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. He froze. I pulled a single sheet of paper from my coat. One invoice, his name on the approval, with a red circle around the account routing number. This, I said, tapping the page, is how you go to prison. And I have 27 more just like it. Matt's grin evaporated. You have no idea what you're doing, he muttered. Oh, I do, I said calmly. And I'm offering you a way out. He narrowed his eyes. What kind of way out? I leaned in. You write a full confession. Detailed. Timeline. Who was involved? How it was done. You send it to my lawyer with a statement claiming Claire masterminded the vendor setup. You say you were pressured, manipulated, whatever you want. Make her the architect. You're insane. No, Matt. I'm giving you a lifeline. Because when this goes public, it's your name on the contracts. Your approvals. Your login timestamps. And what do you get out of it? He asked. Freedom. He didn't respond. Just sat there, staring at the page. I stood up. You have 48 hours. Then I take everything to Janet. And from there, to the board. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Matt. He looked up. If you try to warn her, you both go down together. I walked out. Didn't look back. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't playing catch-up. I was setting the board. And the next move would be mine. For 2 days, I heard nothing. No text from Claire. No panicked emails from Matt. No cryptic messages from unknown numbers. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels curated, like someone's moving pieces behind the curtain while you're kept waiting in the wings. But I didn't wait idly. I met with my lawyer. Uploaded every file to an off-site backup. Scheduled a private meeting with Janet for the following Monday. I even went house shopping. Yeah, house shopping. It felt surreal, standing in open-concept kitchens, fake smiling at realtors, pretending like I was just another guy planning a remodel instead of a man rebuilding from the wreckage of betrayal. And then, Friday morning, it came. I was pouring coffee in the break room when the receptionist walked in with a yellow envelope in her hand. Hey, Adam, she said. Courier just dropped this off for you. No return address. I knew before I even touched it that it was from her. Claire never liked digital footprints. I took it back to my office, locked the door, and opened it slowly. Inside was a single-page letter, handwritten in her careful, looping script, and a small flash drive taped to the bottom. The letter read, Adam, you were never supposed to get involved in this. You were always the good one. The careful one. The one who built things while the rest of us waited for shortcuts. But I guess that's why you were perfect for this. You were the shield. And I used that. Not because I hated you. Not because I stopped caring. But because I couldn't live in your world anymore. You saw order. I saw a trap. Matt was just a door I walked through. You were the house I couldn't breathe in. You'll find everything on the drive, the whole breakdown. You win. But understand this. I never wanted to destroy you. Only to leave. And this was the only way I knew how. Claire. I stared at the letter for a long time. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because of the way she worded it. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I was wrong. Just, you win. As if this was all just a game. I plugged in the drive. Inside, a folder labeled Final. Dozens of files. Password-protected PDFs, internal memos, hidden drafts, audio clips, and then one video. Just one. I clicked play. It was Matt, sitting in his car, nervous, sweating, talking to the camera like he didn't realize it was recording yet. Then, okay, this is for insurance. If anything goes south. He started explaining everything. Dates, amounts, the timeline, Claire's role, her planning, her leverage over him, her promises. He admitted to it all, even to forging my signature once. When the clip ended, I sat there for a long while, not angry, not even relieved, just empty. Because what do you do when your enemy gives you the weapon? And what do you feel when the person you love the most leaves behind a goodbye note that reads like a business settlement? I forwarded the files to my lawyer. Then I printed the letter, framed it, and hung it in my garage right above my old workbench. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that even the people closest to you can become strangers. And sometimes they already were. 6 months later, the house is quieter. Not in a bad way, just in a way that feels real. Claire took a plea deal. Matt flipped. The company quietly settled the matter, swept most of it under a non-disclosure rug. I stayed, promoted, ironically. Trusted, finally. The kids still ask about their mom. I don't lie. I just don't explain more than I need to. They'll draw their own lines when they're older. As for me, I rebuilt. Not everything, not yet. But enough.